I found out my dad isn't my real father at his funeral. My biological father was in the room. The moment they lowered my father's casket into the ground, I felt my mother's hand tighten around mine. I thought it was grief. I thought she was just saying goodbye to the man she'd loved for 33 years. But when I looked at her face, I didn't see sadness. I saw terror, pure, unfiltered terror. And that's when I knew something was very, very wrong. My name is Marcus, and I'm 28 years old. 3 weeks ago, I buried the man I called Dad my entire life. And in the span of one afternoon, everything I thought I knew about my family, my identity, and my entire existence was shattered into a million pieces. This is that story. The funeral was beautiful, if you can call any funeral beautiful. My dad, Richard Bennett, was a pillar of our community. He was a high school principal, a little league coach, and the kind of man who remembered everyone's birthday. The church was packed, standing room only. People flew in from across the country to pay their respects. I delivered the eulogy. I talked about how Dad taught me to ride a bike, how he stayed up with me the night before my SATs quizzing me on vocabulary words, how he cried at my college graduation. My voice cracked about 5 times, and by the end, there wasn't a dry eye in that church, including mine. But here's the thing I didn't mention. Here's the detail that's been eating at me for years. My dad and I looked nothing alike. Nothing. He was 5'7" with red hair and pale skin that burned if he even thought about the sun. I'm 6'2", dark-skinned with black hair and brown eyes. My whole life, people would do a double take when they saw us together. The comments were constant. Must take after your mom's side. Wow, genetics are crazy, huh? Are you adopted? That last one always made Dad uncomfortable. He'd change the subject quickly, maybe a little too quickly, but I never questioned it, not seriously. Mom had the same dark features I did. I figured it made sense. Dad was just the genetic outlier. After the burial, we had the reception at our house. It's this big Victorian my parents bought when I was 5. Mom insisted on hosting despite everyone telling her she should rest. But that was Mom, always the hostess, always in control. Except that day, she wasn't in control. She was barely holding it together. I was in the kitchen refilling the coffee when I overheard 2 of Dad's teacher friends talking in hushed voices near the hallway. I still can't believe Richard's gone. I know, and with everything he knew, everything he carried all these years, that takes a special kind of man. The ultimate sacrifice, really, raising another man's son as your own. I froze. The coffee pot was still in my hand, tilted at a dangerous angle, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Another man's son? My ears were ringing. This had to be a misunderstanding. They had to be talking about someone else. But then the first woman responded. I always wondered if Marcus knew. Do you think Janet ever told him? Janet, my mother. The coffee pot slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor. Both women jumped and turned to look at me. The expressions on their faces told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't gossip. This was the truth, and it was written all over their horrified faces. Marcus, we didn't see you there, one of them stammered. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just turned and walked out of the kitchen, through the crowded living room, and straight to my mother. She was standing by the fireplace talking to my Aunt Linda. When she saw my face, her smile disappeared. Marcus, honey, what's wrong? Kitchen, now. My voice didn't sound like my own. She followed me, and I could feel her nervousness radiating off her in waves. We went into Dad's study, and I closed the door. The room still smelled like his cologne. His reading glasses were still on his desk, and I was about to desecrate his memory with this conversation, but I had no choice. Is Richard Bennett my biological father? I asked. No preamble, no warming up to it. Mom's face went white. Actually white. Marcus, this isn't the time. Is he my father? She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were filled with tears. No, she whispered. He's not. The floor dropped out from under me. I grabbed the edge of Dad's desk to steady myself. Hearing the gossip was one thing. Hearing it confirmed by my own mother was something else entirely. How long were you planning to keep this from me? My voice was shaking now, anger mixing with the shock. Forever, she said, and at least she had the decency to look ashamed. We agreed, your father and I, we agreed you would never know. Richard wasn't my father, I shouted. You just said so. He was your father in every way that mattered, she shot back, her own voice rising. He was there for every scraped knee, every parent-teacher conference, every baseball game. He loved you more than anything in this world. Biology doesn't change that. Who is he? I demanded. Who's my biological father? Mom's face crumpled. She sank into Dad's leather chair, the one he read in every night. His name's David. David Morrison. We were high school sweethearts before I met Richard. David Morrison. The name meant nothing to me. Where is he? Mom looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He's here. He was at the funeral. My stomach dropped. What? He and Richard, they were best friends. David is your godfather, Marcus. He's been in your life since the day you were born. Uncle David. She was talking about Uncle David, the man who taught me to fish, the man who helped me with my college applications, the man who gave me advice about girls and jobs and life, the man who, now that I thought about it, looked exactly like me. I actually laughed, not because anything was funny, but because my brain couldn't process what I was hearing any other way. Uncle David! Uncle David is my father! Your biological father, yes, but Richard, stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I need to understand what happened. Start from the beginning, all of it. Mom wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. David and I dated all through high school. We were that couple, you know? The ones everyone said would get married. We were planning to go to the same college, get married after graduation. We had it all figured out. But the summer after senior year, we went to this party. David was drinking. I was upset about something, I can't even remember what now, and we fought. A big, stupid teenage fight. She paused, lost in the memory. David stormed off with his friends, and Richard, who had graduated the year before and was home from college, he was at the party. He'd always had a crush on me. Everyone knew it. He found me crying, and he was so sweet, so comforting. One thing led to another, and we slept together. Just once. One time. I felt sick. And you got pregnant. I got pregnant, she confirmed. I didn't know right away, of course. David and I made up a few days later. We went off to college together like we'd planned. But 6 weeks into our freshman year, I found out. And I knew. I knew the baby couldn't be David's because of the timing. So you told him? And Richard? I told David first. We were in our dorm, and I was so scared. I thought he'd hate me. I thought he'd leave. But he didn't. He held me while I cried, and he said we'd figure it out together. He was ready to raise you as his own. He loved me that much. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie to him for the rest of our lives. So I told him the truth. I told him the baby was Richard's. Mom's voice broke. He was devastated, absolutely destroyed. We broke up that day. He dropped out of school and moved back home. I did the same. I called Richard and told him. And do you know what that man did? He proposed, right there over the phone. He said he loved me. He'd always loved me. And he wanted to be a father to you. A real father. And David just, what? Accepted it? Not at first. He was angry, hurt. He didn't speak to either of us for months, but Richard reached out to him. They'd been friends since middle school, and Richard refused to let what happened destroy that friendship. He told David that he would never keep you from him, that David would always be a part of your life. It took time, but eventually David came around. He became your godfather. He was there when you were born. He's been there ever since. I slumped against the wall, trying to process all of this. Did Dad? Did Richard, did he resent me? Did he wish I wasn't his? Never. Mom stood up and grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. Marcus, listen to me. Richard Bennett loved you more than life itself. You were his son, his pride and joy. Every achievement, every milestone, he celebrated like you hung the moon. The fact that you didn't share DNA didn't matter to him, not even a little bit. Then why didn't you tell me? I asked, and now I was crying too. Why did I have to find out like this at his funeral from gossip? Because Richard was afraid, she said softly. He was so afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd love him less, that you'd see David as your real father and Richard just the guy who stepped up. He couldn't bear that. And maybe it was selfish, but I agreed with him. You had such a beautiful relationship. We didn't want to complicate it. A knock on the door interrupted us. Janet? Marcus? Is everything okay? It was Aunt Linda's voice. We're fine, Mom called back. Just give us a minute. But we weren't fine. Nothing was fine. I'd just buried my father, only to find out he wasn't my father. And my actual father had been standing at the grave right next to me, grieving the same man, and I had no idea. I need to talk to him. To David. Is he still here? Mom nodded. He's in the backyard. He's been out there since the service ended. I think he wanted to give you space. But Marcus, please be gentle with him. This has been hard on him, too. He lost his best friend, and he's terrified he's about to lose his son. His son. The words felt foreign. David Morrison was a stranger to me, even though I'd known him my entire life. How do you reconcile that? How do you look at someone you've called uncle for 28 years and suddenly see them as your father? I walked through the house in a daze. People tried to stop me, offering condolences and hugs, but I pushed past them. I needed air. I needed answers. I needed to understand how my entire life had been a lie. David was sitting on the bench by Mom's rose garden. He had his head in his hands, and even from a distance, I could see his shoulders shaking. He was crying. This man, who I'd always known as the stoic one, the steady one, was falling apart. Uncle David? I said, then immediately regretted it. What was I supposed to call him now? He looked up, and the resemblance hit me like a freight train. It was like looking in a mirror aged 30 years. Same nose, same jawline, same eyes. How had I never seen it before? How had no one ever pointed it out? Marcus. He stood up quickly, wiping his face. I'm sorry, I just needed some air. The house was getting crowded and... I know, I interrupted. I know everything. Mom told me. The color drained from his face. What did she tell you? That you're my biological father, that you and Dad were best friends, that this has been a secret my entire life. I took a step closer. Why didn't you ever say anything? David sank back onto the bench. Because Richard was your father, Marcus, not me. I gave up that right 28 years ago when I agreed to let him raise you. But you didn't have to, I said. You could have been in my life as my dad. Instead, I knew you as my uncle. Why? Because your mother loved Richard, David said simply, and Richard loved her, and they both wanted to give you a stable, normal family. Me being your biological father would have complicated everything. Richard and I talked about it endlessly. We agreed this was the best way. You'd have two fathers in your life, even if you only knew about one of them. I got to watch you grow up. I got to be part of your life. That was enough for me. Was it? I challenged. Really? Because you're sitting out here crying at my father's funeral, and I'm wondering if maybe you're not just crying for Richard. Maybe you're crying because you never got to be my dad. David looked at me with such raw pain in his eyes that I almost regretted pushing. Every single day, he whispered, every single day I watched Richard be your father, and it killed me. But I also saw how much he loved you, how good he was with you, and I knew I'd made the right choice. You had an amazing dad, Marcus, a man who chose you, a man who loved you unconditionally. How could I resent that? Did Richard know? Did he know how you felt? Of course he did. We were best friends. We talked about everything. And you know what he used to say to me? He'd say, "David, I got to raise him, but you gave him life. We're both his father. We're just playing different roles." David's voice cracked. He made sure I was always included. Every birthday, every holiday, every major event. He never pushed me out. He kept his promise. I sat down next to him on the bench. We were quiet for a long moment, both of us staring at Mom's roses. "I don't know what to do with this information," I finally admitted. "I don't know how to feel. Richard was my dad. He'll always be my dad. But you, I don't even know what you are to me now." "I'm whatever you want me to be," David said quietly. "If you want me to stay Uncle David, I'll stay Uncle David. If you never want to see me again, I'll understand. But if you want to get to know me as your biological father, as just David, I'd like that. I'd like that very much." "I'm angry," I said, and it felt good to admit it out loud. "I'm angry at Mom for keeping this from me. I'm angry at Richard for making her keep this from me. And I'm angry at you for going along with it. I deserved to know the truth." "You're right," David agreed. "You did. And if I could go back and do it differently, I'm not sure I would. Because the alternative might have meant not having Richard in your life at all. And you needed him. He was a better father than I ever could have been." "You don't know that," I argued. "Yes, I do. Because I was 20 years old and terrified when your mother got pregnant. I wasn't ready to be a father. I wasn't mature enough, responsible enough. Richard was. He stepped up in a way I couldn't have. And by the time I was ready, you already had a dad." We sat there as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard. Inside the house, I could hear the sounds of people laughing and talking, celebrating Richard's life. And out here, I was sitting with my biological father, trying to figure out what came next. "Tell me about when I was born," suddenly. "Were you there?" David smiled, really smiled, for the first time since I'd come outside. "I was the first person besides the doctors to hold you. Richard insisted. He handed you to me and said, 'Say hello to your godson, David.' You were so tiny. You had a full head of dark hair and you were screaming your head off. But the moment I held you, you stopped crying and just stared at me. And I knew you were mine. Not legally, not officially, but mine." "What did you do?" I asked. "I cried," David admitted. "And then I handed you back to Richard and watched him become your father. And I've been watching ever since. Every t-ball game, every school play, every graduation. I was always there, Marcus. Maybe not as your dad, but I was there." "I remember," I said quietly. "You were always there. I wish I'd known why." "Would it have changed anything?" David asked. I thought about that. Would it have? Would I have loved Richard less if I'd known he wasn't my biological father? Would I have felt differently about David if I'd known the truth? "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I think I deserved the chance to find out." "You're right, you did." My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Mom, texting to check on me. People were starting to leave, and she wanted to know if I was coming back inside. I texted back that I needed a few more minutes. "What happens now?" David asked. "Where do we go from here?" I looked at him, this man who was both a stranger and completely familiar. "I don't know," I said. "I need time to process all of this, to figure out what it means. But I don't want you to disappear from my life. You've always been in it, and I don't want that to change." "It won't," David promised. "I'm not going anywhere. I've waited 28 years. I can wait a little longer while you figure this out." We stood up, and after a moment of awkward hesitation, I hugged him. He hugged me back, and I felt him shaking. When we pulled apart, we were both crying again. "For what it's worth," David said, "Richard was so proud of you, right up until the end. His last words to me were about you. He said, 'Take care of our boy, David. Make sure he knows he was loved.' Our boy, not his boy, our boy." "I'll always love Richard," I said. Learning the truth doesn't change that. Good, because he loved you more than anything. We both do. We walked back to the house together. People were starting to leave, gathering their coats and saying their goodbyes. I rejoined my mother, and David went to help clean up. We didn't tell anyone what had happened, what had been revealed. That conversation was for another day. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was finally quiet, I went into Richard's study. I pulled out the photo albums and looked through pictures of my childhood. Richard teaching me to ride a bike, Richard at my high school graduation, Richard walking me through college move-in day. And in so many of those photos, there was David, Uncle David, my biological father. Always there, always watching, always part of the story. I found a letter in Richard's dress drawer. It was addressed to me in his handwriting. The envelope was sealed and written across the front were the words, "To Marcus, open when you're ready to know the truth." My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was dated 3 years ago. Dear Marcus, if you're reading this, then you know, and I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I wanted to tell you myself, but I was a coward. I was afraid of losing you, but you deserve to know the truth. David Morrison is your biological father, but I hope, son, that I was your dad. I tried to be. Every single day, I tried to be worthy of you. You were never a burden or an obligation. You were my greatest joy, and if loving you makes me your father, then I was your father in the truest sense of the word. I love you, Marcus. Always have, always will, no matter what. Dad. I sat in that study and cried until I had no tears left. For Richard, for David, for my mother, for the complicated, messy, beautiful family I'd been given, and for the truth that was kept from me out of love, even if it was misguided. It's been 3 weeks since the funeral. I'm still processing everything. I've started meeting with David for coffee once a week. We're getting to know each other in a new way, building something that's different from uncle and nephew, but not quite father and son. Not yet, anyway. Maybe not ever. And that's okay. I'm also in therapy because, let's be real, this is a lot to unpack. My therapist says grief and identity are closely linked, and I'm dealing with both. Some days I'm angry, some days I'm sad. Some days I'm grateful that I had Richard for 28 years, even if the foundation was built on a secret. My relationship with my mother is complicated right now. I understand why she did what she did, but I'm not ready to forgive her yet. Maybe someday. We're working on it. As for Richard, I miss him every single day. Finding out he wasn't my biological father hasn't changed how I feel about him. He was my dad. He chose me. He loved me. And in the end, maybe that's what matters most. Not the DNA, but the choice to show up. Every single day, Richard Bennett chose to be my dad, and that makes him my dad in every way that counts. So, that's my story. The day I found out my dad wasn't my real father at his funeral, and that my biological father was in the room. It's messy and complicated and painful, but it's also a testament to love, to the men who loved me enough to put my needs first, to the sacrifice Richard made in worrying he'd lose me if I knew the truth, to the sacrifice David made in stepping back so I could have a stable family. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if David and I will ever have a traditional father-son relationship, but I know this. I was loved by 2 fathers in 2 different ways, and maybe that's the truth that matters most. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. This has been the hardest month of my life, but sharing it helps. If you're dealing with family secrets or complicated relationships, know that you're not alone. It's messy, it's hard, but it's worth working through. Take care of yourselves and hug your parents, whoever they are to you. Life's too short for secrets.